Work now. So as part of the Industry Growth Program, AMGC is an industry partner organisation. The purpose of AMGC and the IPOs or partner organisations is to help you with practical on-the-ground knowledge, help you navigate your commercialisation journey, solve problems or introduce you to local suppliers or expertise that can help you in these areas. AMGC is the peak body representing small to medium-sized manufacturers. We have a very extensive national network and we help companies on their commercialisation journey through either co-investment, through webinars such as these, connecting you in with peers or suppliers, and helping governments also with their understanding of the bespoke and unique requirements for SMEs. As part of the AMGC Connect service under the Industry Growth Program, we offer one-to-one engagement through our directors, Alan Littman and Mark Peters, as well as a few other people within our organisation, and their details and names will come up at the end. We also offer one-to-few events, which is very similar to these, but in person, where we take you out into industry to see what best practice looks like. And then one-to-many events such as these, where we try to impart broader understandings of themes and topics, and in the particular circumstances of today, how Bosch Australia Manufacturing Solutions can assist you on your scaling up and journey to commercialisation. We are joined today by Louisa from Bosch Australia Manufacturing Solutions, who's going to take you through some things to consider as you scale up. Louisa and the team at Bosch leverage 140 years of innovation. It is a global entity with deep understanding of the unique requirements of the Australian manufacturing ecosystem. Initially, Bosch, I think you hid a lot of your knowledge under your bushel, but as the manufacturing industry has evolved and the Australian landscape has evolved, BAMS is now there to help you with unique challenges or issues that you might need advice on. AMGC has a long history of working side by side with BAMS, and quite a few of our projects have actually benefited from their deep knowledge, a couple of which will be covered today in this presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand over to Louisa and the team at BAMS. Please remember that if you have any questions, place them up in the Q&A function and we will address those at the end of the presentation. Thank you for joining us, and Louisa, I will hand over to you.
Great, thank you, Tyson. Can you hear me? Excellent. I'll share my screen. In presentation. Right. Thank you, Tyson and AMGC, for the invitation to speak today. And the topic, from prototype to profit, mastering the art of scaling, I think is a great topic, and hopefully one we can have some good conversation about at the end. So just to give you a little bit of a lead in about Bosch, so I'm the head of the consulting and manufacturing as a service team. I'm sure everyone has heard of Bosch. It's a large global company with around 400,000 people globally, and we have fingers in many pies. We have four main areas within Bosch: mobility solutions, industrial technology, energy and building technology, and consumer goods. And we fall under the industrial technology here within BAMS. Something you may not be aware of is Bosch is a 94% charitable trust, so we're not publicly listed, and therefore we have we operate in a bit of a different way to other companies. So I've just put our company values up there, and they're very important to us because of the way that we're structured. Within BAMS, or just giving you a little bit of our history, 7 decades of manufacturing innovation in Australia and beyond. So we started here manufacturing in 1954, and then we've gone through manufacturing diodes for at one point with a Bosch global diode manufacturer. In 2013, as you would be aware, the car industry was declining in Australia, and actually I worked for 18 years at Holden as a manufacturing engineer, so that affected me as well. And so Bosch was looking at what they could do with all their knowledge around automotive manufacturing and the work that we were doing building bespoke or manufacturing equipment internally, and decided that we could offer that externally. So we started working with external customers in robotics automation solutions. Then in 2021, we opened our new factory, which you can see on the screen there, and we have gone on from there. So what we do within BAMS, Bosch Australia Manufacturing Solutions, we have 4 main teams: manufacturing consulting, manufacturing as a service. So I lead both of those teams. The main part of our business is robotics and automation, and we also do equipment servicing for equipment that we install, as well as servicing of other equipment. So I guess something that I wanted to mention there as well was we work with startups as well as existing manufacturers. So within the consulting team, we probably spend half our time with each. Startups from companies as small as 2 people through to quite significant startups. And I've got an example of one at the end that I'll go through, which is Raygen. So to get into the topic that we wanted to discuss today around manufacturing and scaling, I wanted to put this slide up first. So first things first, it's tempting to just jump into feasibility of, can your product be manufactured? But what we have, I think that where you really need to start is there a need in the market for your product, and what's the size of the market? And I guess initially we were spending less time on this and focusing on the feasibility, but I think if you don't have the desirability for the product, don't understand your market, then that actually ties in, which you'll see a little bit later. And does your product meet the needs? So there might be a market, but maybe it's only a percentage of the market that your product meets the needs of. And then the viability which ties it all together. Does the business case stack up? So for your product in the market, can you make it, and does it all stack up? So then I think the starting point for us is when we're talking about feasibility. When should I think about scaling? So really, the planning that you do at the start of your project is in manufacturing is very important. So particularly for the startups that we meet, a lot of them are very focused on their product, which of course is understandable. They're working with IP that they've been often working with for years. They understand their product inside and out, and then the manufacturing is kind of, okay, we'll do that next. But really the two are tied in together very closely. So your product design and your plans for how you're going to manufacture the product are very closely tied in. So right at the start of any engagement that we have with our customers, we start talking about what we call the project premises. So what are the anticipated volumes of your product? So what does that look like now in the next 12 months, but also in the next few years, particularly the next 5 years? Also, how many variants of your product are there? So, we sort of think, sometimes we start with, oh no, we've only got one product. But then when you get into a little bit of detail, oh yeah, well, we might have a bit of variant for this market or that. So understanding the variants has a big impact on your scaling strategy. And also, where will I be manufacturing? So you may be manufacturing in Australia, somewhere overseas, bit of a mixture of both, or you may not have a site at all. It's just hypothetically, how am I going to manufacture and how will that scale? But I think the key to long-term success, it's planning and how you grow your production efficiently, profitably, and without sacrificing quality. And all of those are very important points. And then from our point of view, the next most important thing after understanding the overall product is understanding your product design. So design for manufacture and assembly, you may have heard of. There's an example there on the left-hand side, which looks at a product that is pretty complex, 24 parts in total, 8 different part numbers, and several manufacturing and assembly processes. And you might also notice that some of those assembly processes are happening from the bottom up, some of them from the top down. So you have to turn your product over a few times while you're manufacturing it. going through a DFMA redesign, you could actually make that 2 parts where the handle just clips into the tray, which obviously has benefits from all sorts of sides. So going through a DFMA process, we get startups coming to us and saying, we've finished our design, and then you look at it and think, oh, I could do that. We could take some costs out of that. So we could minimise the part count, we could standardise materials and components, we could simplify and optimise the assembly processes, as per the example on the left-hand side, and we could also introduce some error proofing in the design so that you can only fit parts one way. You can't get them, on backwards or fitted the wrong way. So they're just some of the key principles of DFMA, but that's the structured process that we go through, which is something that I think is important to consider early on. Here's an example that's a little bit different to the one on the previous page. This is from a big project that we were involved in, and AMGC was as well, but by the sounds of it. And this was a COVID test kit that we were helping with the robotics automation solution for. So we built 27 production lines for a loom that we sent to Brisbane and over to the US. So this is just one of the parts that they were assembling. It's the dropper, the blue part there, and it had a biological strip that needed to be inserted, as you can see on the right-hand side. They'd already locked in their design, and this is what we needed to achieve. First of all, the biological strip needed to be, that's the little white thing in the dropper there, needed to be scored, it had to be cut, it had to be grabbed, folded and inserted, and then it would spring into position. It had to be shaped like a C, but the ends of the C couldn't be touching. It couldn't be sitting sideways, and it wasn't allowed to fall out. So if you held it upside down, it couldn't fall out. So that was what they designed in. And I guess my question, I don't know the answer to it, is that really the way that it needs to be designed? And the reason we couldn't change it is because it had gone through FDA approval and there wasn't time to go through and do another design loop. But you can see the complexity of the design there, and this is what the result was from a automation point of view. They wanted to automate this, and of course anything's possible with time and money, but if the design had been changed somewhat, I think this process could have been much more straightforward and cheaper and potentially more robust, less breakdowns, etc. So it's a good solution, but it could have been a little bit easier. And now I guess getting on to the strategic planning for growth, talk about True North. Within Bosch, we have our own Bosch production system, which is like Toyota production system, where we have our own sort of True North things that we're aiming for, things like 100% added value, 100% delivery performance, 0 defects, one-piece flow. So that's what we're aiming for with everything we do from a manufacturing point of view. Some other things that need to be considered with strategic planning is really understanding capital requirements for scaling. So what factory are you looking to set up in? What equipment do you need for that? What sort of inventory are you going to be carrying? And how much labour do you need to assemble your product? From a factory planning point of view, I guess from the design itself. So you want to make sure that it's a lean line that you're designing, and also consider how the factory is orientated from a layout point of view of your process equipment. So, for example, having all incoming goods coming in one side of the factory and all finished goods coming out the other side of the factory. Supplier management is a big topic as well. So within Bosch, we spend a lot of time on make versus buy decisions. So sometimes with startups, they want to make everything in-house to protect what they're doing. But I guess from within Bosch, if something's critical to your IP, then you definitely want to be doing it in-house. If something's a commodity and you can buy it cheap off the shelf from someone else to go into your part, then that's what we do. So make versus buy decisions are important. And then also mapping out your logistics. So where are your parts coming from? How are they going to get from the supplier into your warehouse, and what does that look like? Also setting up for operational excellence, and I think the last 2 points there are kind of tied in together. Part of operational excellence is culture and performance management, making sure you get the right people in at the right time, making sure that they're trained in everything that they need to be doing, that they have standardised work where they can, that the team is empowered, that they have KPIs and that they're tracked and that they know when they're performing well and when things are getting a little bit off track. And continuous improvement is also important as part of having a high-performing team. Then also from operational excellence point of view, lean manufacturing, waste reduction, and a focus on the value stream. So this ties in with what I've got on the left-hand side as our true north, is everything we do is focused on adding value to a product. So anything that's non-value adding, we try and take out. So if people are wandering around from process to process, looking for parts, having to reorientate product to as part of assembly processes, they're all non-value adding activities that aren't adding any value for your customer, and so we would scrutinise that and try and take as much out as we can. Also waste reduction, so transporting material around in your factory, underutilising resources, having some people busy and other people standing around, all of those are forms of waste, and that all rolls into lean manufacturing. So having a manufacturing as lean as possible so that it's as cost effective as it can be. Startup danger zones. There are many danger zones, I guess, for a startup. Here are some of the pitfalls that we've seen. I think one of the big ones is trying to scale up before becoming lean. So what you're actually then doing is scaling up waste. And that also comes back to trying to scale up if you have a design that's not mature. So you want to scale up, make sure that you're ready, plan before you scale, and make sure you're as lean as possible. We also have some existing manufacturers that we're working with that are doing things like factory relocation, and we would always take it back to make sure that your manufacturing processes are as lean as possible before you're doing a relocation or scaling up or ramping up. Automating before the design is mature. That is something that we also come across quite a bit, that companies are looking, in 5 years' time I want to be making these volumes and so I want to automate. But if your design's not mature, then it's going to be very costly to change the design if the process is automated, and it also reduces the flexibility because you might find you have to move around different operations, or robot's not needed here anymore, it's needed there. So really make sure your design is mature and you're thinking about design freeze at some point before ramping up your manufacturing. We've also had a different view of design freeze from some companies that we work with. I remember one that they said that they had a design freeze and then a week later they had design freeze version 2. So design freeze is design freeze. Unless you need to change something afterwards, it should be frozen. Poor understanding of critical characteristics. So what I mean by critical characteristics is anything that is critical in your design. So that could be something that if you don't meet that characteristics, like that design tolerance or fitting a nut or something, then it could lead to either a failure of your product or a safety issue. So an example in the automotive industry of a critical characteristic was fitting the nut onto the steering wheel. Obviously, if you don't fit it, then the steering wheel can come off while you're driving, and might seem ridiculous now, but I know that has happened in the automotive industry before. We had things like nut runners that locked into traceability systems. So the critical characteristics in your design, it's important that you understand them and take them down to the bare minimum. So coming in with 50 different critical characteristics is probably not helpful. If you can get it down to the ones that really are critical, and maybe that's half a dozen characteristics, tolerances or or viscosities or whatever it might be, then that's great, because that means that you can then look at critical process characteristics and how you control those. If you understand those well, then it will reduce your scrap and rework, and also reduce product recalls, like my example of the steering wheel nut. Similarly, you need to understand your safety requirements. If you don't understand your safety requirements from the start, then you can get in trouble later. A couple of examples there. We sometimes come across companies that say, I'm going to buy this bit from China, like as in production equipment, or companies that have already bought stuff from China, and you may find that, like for example, the wiring standards don't meet Australian standards. Some other examples are companies sometimes don't have good guarding around robots because they haven't understood the safety risks. It can be very difficult, can be expensive, and cause project delays if you don't understand your safety requirements from the start. Overly optimistic volume forecast. We all like to think that our product is going to be a smash hit in the market and everyone will want one. But the worst thing that you can do is scale up for huge volumes and then find that actually it's not that popular in the market, and now you're stuck with this equipment that is being underutilised, which again is just another form of waste. So being really realistic about your volume forecasts is important, and maybe having a range of, okay, well, this is what I think it will be. It might be as low as this, it might be as high as that. And it's always easier I think it's easier to scale up than to sit there with underutilised factory, because that might put you out of business. Poor strategic planning and integration. And I guess the integration of all of your production equipment and your whole business really is important. Talking to an established manufacturer the other day who has a great product that they're making a lot of, very popular in the Australian market, and they want to get more volume through. And I asked them what they were planning to do, and they said, oh, we're planning to buy more inventory. And then I said, well, how do you know if your factory can keep up with it? How do you know if you're ahead or behind a schedule in the factory? And they said, well, we have to go out and have a look because we don't really have any dashboards that tell us how we're going. So, having an integrated system really helps with reducing waste and getting on to any issues out in production as quickly as possible and reducing downtime. I think that ties into this topic as well, digital first approach. And for startups, you may think that your digitalisation strategy is something that you consider later. But I think having a unified collaborative digital value chain is really important, and at least considering it at the beginning. So it is a great step. So 4 different areas of that, I guess. The first one, smart factory. So that could mean a lot of things, but really integration of OT, IT, real-time visibility, maybe having a digital twin, integrated production, quality and maintenance. So an example of a company that had a lot of data available, I worked at Downer Rail for a while, and they were collecting 30,000 pieces of information on each train, the new trains in Sydney at the time, every 10 minutes, and they weren't really doing anything with that data. So with data from across the factory and other areas of your organisation, the way that you assemble that data and the way that you use the data is as important as having sensors across everything and collecting data. If you don't have a data strategy, then it's another form of waste. Digital supply chain, so transparent procurement and logistics, smart warehousing, smart delivery, integrated planning, all of those, they're all topics in themselves that we could spend an hour talking about. But thinking about your supply chain, thinking about how you can streamline it as much as possible and integrate it into your digitalisation strategy is important. Also connected products and services. having digital business models, R&D, continuous and agile improvements, again, needs to be considered, and digital support functions. Streamlined customer experience, so you want to delight your customer, so with omni-channel management. So all this ties in to become your digital ecosystem. So I guess what happens if you don't have a digitalisation strategy, and what happens if you do? If you don't, potentially you can be investing in projects with a low ROI because you're not really considering all the projects and assessing them on their merits. Something that I should mention with the digitalisation strategy or digitalisation projects, the ROI of introducing them with existing manufacturers can be ridiculous. Like, they can pay for themselves like many-fold. Investing in the wrong gear, again, because you haven't really done your homework. Having a technical debt because you're using non-standard solutions and then having to manage all of those. And also potentially doubling of the work or missing some things that you want to do because it's just misaligned. So if you do have a digitalisation strategy, so obviously have an aligned digital transformation vision, you're identifying your biggest pain points and the potential ROI and focusing on those first. There's a shared understanding of Industry 4 and a commitment to being on board, and also defined Industry 4 roles and structure to support the Industry 4 projects. So we have someone in our team that specialises in Industry 4. I'm saying that more that I think it's not just, it shouldn't necessarily be just part of everyone's jobs, but seek out the people that have expertise in the area, because there's I guess a lot to it. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention here as well is cybersecurity. It's a big topic. It's a massive topic for Bosch, because the last thing we want to do is be hacked or have some sort of cybersecurity issue. But I think the cybersecurity strategy for manufacturing is as important as for any other part of your business. And if you think about it, especially if you've got automation, robots and things, best case might be that everything goes down and doesn't work, but there are potentially some other ways that could unfold as well. So considering your cybersecurity strategy is really important. Just wanted to move now onto an example of the way that we've worked with one of our customers, and I guess this is just to illustrate a few of the points that I've made earlier as well. So Raygen, you may have heard of them, a very successful startup in Victoria. They make heliostat farms, so they're mirrors that point up to a receiver and produce energy. You'll see some other pictures of what that looks like in a couple of slides. So this is a heliostat that's nearly 5 metres by 5 metres, and they came to us because they were hand making the heliostats, and they needed to start making them in big volumes. 300 heliostats a day. They're unique in that the curvature of each heliostat is unique depending on where it's positioned within the array, so that you have optimal solar reflection. So they had about 3 minutes to make each heliostat on a 24/7 production cycle. So this was 60 times faster than their manual workflow, and it needed to be in some areas to 0.1 millimetre accuracy. So quite a challenging product to make. And this is what we ended up with for the line that we designed and built for Raygen. This is what it looks like in our factory here in Clayton. So ended up with a number of robots, one of them being the biggest KUKA robot that you can get, which is a 1-ton robot, and a few others there. So I think the most important thing here is we have been with Raygen right from the start. So they came to us initially with the product design. We worked on the product design. We also tweaking it a little bit to make it a little bit easier to manufacture. We also talked to them about the cycle time, or so product premises. So they wanted to have a particular cycle time, and we worked through that and decided it probably needed to be a little bit quicker to allow for some of the issues that they may have through production, and to allow for the way that they're running their production shifts. And then went through the whole process of designing their line, going through their value stream, removing as much waste as we can, and helping them right through to, so they're now set up and manufacturing in Mildura. So that's what it looks like. That's a couple of arrays that Raygen have installed. And I guess some of the lessons that came from this project, so they were building manual prototypes to prove their technology, and they were looking at scaling at the right time because they already understood a lot about their design and how it was going to be manufactured. They sought external support for validation of the project premises, which was with us, experienced trusted partner to ask the right questions at the right time. It was a collaborative process of simultaneous engineering, product and packaging. So automation partner engaged early before the design was locked in. So as I said, we did go through some of that design for manufacture and assembly, some discussions, and tweak the design. They had an early focus on critical characteristics and acceptance criteria, so we could really focus with the process on making sure that we met those critical characteristics. The DFMA process I mentioned, they strictly adhered to a design freeze. So I actually knew some people on the team because they came from the automotive industry, and that's a big topic in automotive to really adhere to design freeze for obvious reasons. And they had a local automation supplier, which just makes it easier if you're working on this in such a collaborative way, in case to keep the teams working together. So I think some of the key considerations for innovation and scaling up, be open to pivoting. So I mentioned Illume earlier, so they were developing, I think they were developing, Tyson may know more about this, but their product for flus and things like that is when COVID came to the forefront, they pivoted and started focusing on COVID. And we've seen that with a number of companies. I'm going to show you something about BOD, and they also pivoted. I'll explain that in a moment. Design for manufacture and assembly, I've mentioned a number of times. Minimum viable product. We get companies coming to us with fantastic ideas about what they can do with their product. You know, we could do this, we could do that. They've got people phoning them all the time of the different ideas of how they can use their product. I think it's really important to get something out into the market, a minimum viable product that you can sell, that you can learn from, and then potentially you can have follow-on projects that are a step behind your minimum viable product that you've got in the market. Because without that, you can just get so distracted by all these other things that you could be doing that you never actually get something solid out in the market to start with. Also focusing on what your core business is, and it kind of ties in with the MVP, but understand what your core business is and don't get distracted into other areas. Appropriate scaling. So Illume, who I've mentioned before, their 27 production lines. When we met them, they were hand assembling their product up in Brisbane. At one point, as they were scaling up, I think they had 700 people hand assembling their smart COVID test kits in Brisbane, and then those people, then they introduced some automation as well, so that they didn't need as many people as time went on. So just at scaling in an appropriate way. There's nothing wrong with doing manual assembly. Like in automotive, most of the work that I did was manual assembly because it didn't make sense for that area to be automated. So the body shop, you saw a lot of robots in, but the assembly, where all the parts are actually fitted to the car, a lot of that's hand assembly. So you only want to scale when it's appropriate, and you also only want to automate when it's appropriate. And I think the final point is getting the right team around you throughout your journey. So if you're putting on all the people that you need at different stages in the project, you're going to have a really large team that are expensive, and you have to go through all of the pain of hiring people, seeing if they're working out. Sometimes you just need a few hours or a few weeks of different areas of expertise, and tapping into that as needed is much more cost effective than trying to fill your team with all the experts that you need. And the final thought, this is another company that we work with called BOD. So BOD have a body scanning device that you can see on the bottom right there. So you stand on the turntable, it spins you around slowly, and there's, I think, 8 cameras that take all of your measurements. They originally were going to 3D print the body and then fit clothes to people using the 3D printout of you. I think that was their original plan. They pivoted and decided that actually the data itself is really important. And so now what they use this for is measuring up people for uniforms in, like if they're for the police force and things like that. So sometimes those measurements can take an hour or two to get all your measurements. If you get spun around on a BOD machine, you can get your readings in 1 or 2 minutes, and you've got all the information that you need. So fantastic innovation. They decided that they're actually interested in the data, not making BOD machines. So they have partnered with BAMS. So we're hardware focused, they're software as a service focused. So we actually make the equipment for them. So I guess the point here is you also need to decide, do I actually want to be manufacturing? Is this something that, we're just focusing on data or some other aspect of the business? So it's something to consider as well. All right, well, that's what I had to present, and I will hand it back to Tyson.
Thanks, Louisa. You're welcome to leave that slide up for a minute. If not, I will bring it up as well. No, it's fine. Not a problem. We've got it covered. Thank you very much for that. I know that 40 minutes or 35 minutes is running through years of knowledge and experience that you have. So we appreciate that this is giving us but a taste of all of the embedded knowledge that exists within BAMS. We do have a question that was posted partway through, and it's from Brody. Are you able to integrate additional robotic equipment to an existing robot line? For example, could you integrate a parts handling robot solution to an existing robot welding cell? While you consider the response, I'll just remind everyone, if you do have a question, please put it up in the Q&A section. So, Louisa, is that something that you'd like to talk about?
Yes, I think so. So it completely depends. But yes, I think that's anything's possible with time and money. That's what the other part of the team would say to me. But whether it makes sense, I don't know. We'd have to have a look and assess it. But we do add to lines all the time and move them around and change them. I think it's important to understand what's the problem that you're trying to solve by doing that, and are there other ways of doing that, and assessing whether it makes sense or not. But yes, I would say that it would be possible, but have to have a look.
Thank you. And Brody, we've had experience with a couple of companies within the IGP where they've thought of, biting off a huge amount of capital expenditure to solve a problem. And the best money they've spent is having someone from outside the business come in and have a look and determine that what they were proposing wasn't actually necessary to solve the issue they had. So if I can, back in something Louisa said there, it's probably good that people come and have a chat or a look and see before you do dive into the deep end.
Yeah. So sorry, Tyson. The other thing that I would say is it's not uncommon for us to go to a manufacturer and they've got a bunch of automation equipment sitting in the corner because it didn't work out. So you really have to make sure that you, like I said, plan, and that you understand what you're trying to achieve with your automation, and that everyone knows how to use it, and that it's doing what it's supposed to do, because otherwise it's just money that will be sitting on the side of your factory.
Absolutely. So we talked earlier, just before we started the presentation, about some of the the easy mistakes that people make early on, particularly in their commercialization journey. Um, One of the points that you talked about in your slides just then was customer. That customer voice in your operations before you do dive in and commit to significant capex. How important is that from your perspective?
So by customer, which customer are we talking about?
So
Like
again,
of the product?
yes, yeah, end users, a paying customer. Do you find that some companies jump in trying to solve what they assume is the problem before they get the customer voice?
Yes, yeah. So I think it's a really good point, because obviously most startups are very focused on their product, and it's easy to think that everyone wants your product in the way that you've designed it. But I think understanding who the customers are, what the customer's looking for, how they're going to use the product and interact with the product is really important. And there's a systems engineering approach that can look at it from different points of view. So I'm a customer and this is what I'm looking for. I'm a service person and this is how I'd like to service them, your product or whatever it might be. But understanding all the people that are going to be interacting with your product, I think is really important. And there's lots of different ways of doing that. To be honest, it's not something that we really specialise in, but that some of the design houses, for example, can do like a work package around part of the product design is understanding how customers are going to be using it and interacting with it and what they're looking for and what price they're willing to pay for it as well.
Absolutely. I've had the pleasure of walking through BAMS's facility, and obviously there's sometimes the Kuma robots and the big things, but the services you offer are far more broad than that as well. Can you just talk about, given this call, we could have food and beverage manufacturers, we could have materials manufacturers, we could have fabricators, med tech. Can you give us an understanding of the breadth of customers that you can service and I suppose the capabilities you do have?
Yeah, so robotics and automation is I guess the core part of what we do. But what we've found is that that often understanding pain points or working with companies around around like for startups. You're not just quoting on robotics automation equipment, but you're working with them in a collaborative way to get to the point where they're ready for scaling up or manufacturing equipment, or do they even need to have automation? Are they just looking for help with setting up manufacturing full stop? So that's where the consulting side came in. So we didn't initially have the consulting team here. So no one likes the word consultant, but I think manufacturing partners maybe is a little bit better. And while we do have like lean operational excellence people within our team, I think what we can offer is the whole end-to-end solution. So we can work with you on your design for manufacture and assembly and your manufacturing strategy, planning, your digitalisation solutions, automation if you need it, right through to servicing. And then servicing can be across the board as well. So robotics, automation equipment, but we service all sorts of things. And we do work in basically any industry that's manufacturing products. So not so much processes and chemicals and things like that, but we work in medtech, renewables, construction, pretty much any discrete manufacturing process.
Excellent. Given that your physical footprint is in Victoria, and a lot of these participants in this program are spread across the nation, do you have a team on the ground that can come out and have a look, or at least have that initial chat? What's the best way to engage with BAMS if people on this call have found something of interest?
Yep, we certainly do. So our headquarters are in Victoria, but we also have representation across Australia. So particularly in New South Wales, in Queensland, South Australia, but we work with companies right across Australia and sometimes, Oceania as well, so New Zealand and other areas. and Tasmania.
Excellent. I'll just put a call out for final questions. For anyone, please don't hold back if there's something. The only poor question is one that doesn't get asked. We're happy to take care of anything here. At the same time, I'd like to remind people that are participating in the industry growth program that we do have the ability to facilitate some time with Bosch if there is a question or a concern or a challenge that you're facing and you think that Bosch are the people to address that. Please get in touch with your advisor and ask them for a referral through to AMGC, and then we can put you in touch with Bosch. I see Julie's got her hand up, but Julie, could I get you to post your question in the Q&A box? I'll just check that it hasn't come through. But again, we can facilitate time and that expertise from Bosch. So please make sure you reach out to your advisor or get in touch with us at connect@amgc.org.au. Julie's put her hand down.
Tyson, just one other thing that I just wanted to add. So we're happy to have a chat with anyone at any time as well. So I don't mind spending an hour or two talking with companies about their plans. I mean, we generally work on a fee-for-service basis, but if you think it might be a little bit too early to work with Bosch, always happy to you're invited to come in and have a chat or set up a Teams call, because even just to have a discussion and know, okay, well, in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, I should be doing this or that could be quite helpful.
Excellent. And we have done that in a few occasions, and it's turned out that either they're a little bit too early or that it's been the ideal chat to have that started a broader conversation. So I'm happy to facilitate those. Before I change the slide, if anybody wishes to take down the contact details and email address for Bosch, please do so. And then I will just jump on to the next slide. So as part of the industry growth program, AMGC is here to help. Bosch forms part of our support and partner network. So again, if there is anything that you believe that they can assist you with, please get in touch with us via the connect@amgc.org.au. Someone's just posted something. Yeah, that's fine. There will be a recording of this made available to others who have either had to jump off or take care of a business issue, because business does come first. But there is a support network there, and we're more than happy to facilitate links back through. Any of the people on the screen there, including myself, are able to help you, but we filter that through the one email address to keep it simple and straightforward. Louisa, I want to thank you for your time. There are a lot of people out there that you've probably got thinking about what they need to do next, and we'd be happy to put them in touch with you. It's a broad field, it's an interesting field, and there's lots of amazing work being done. So thank you for your time, and thank you for Bosch for supporting the program. Unless there are any last minute questions, I'll probably let the meeting come to an end, although Alex has just put up his hand. I'm not sure if that's for a question. Please place it in the Q&A box. But Louisa, is there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the group, whether it's one of the more interesting challenges that you've faced in your time at Bosch, or just some things that you've noticed in your time in manufacturing? And I hate to put you on the spot, by the way.
Well, I think on a personal note, I think that it's fantastic working with so many different companies. And I often have people outside of work saying to me, I didn't realise there was so much manufacturing in Australia. And there is so much going on. I think it's really exciting, especially in the startup space. But we're very passionate about keeping manufacturing in Australia. So if there's anything that we can do to support at any time, that's something that we're very keen to support. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk today, Tyson. Much appreciated.
Pleasure. And sorry, I was on the hop. I got scribed in at the last minute due to something going on with our normal compare. Alex has just posted a question. He's thanked you for your presentation, Louisa. It's fantastic. I agree. Could you give some suggestions on good ways to communicate the essential requirements to a partner without having to go through the years of development into why something has been developed the way it has, or bad communication methods to avoid? I hope that makes a bit of sense for you.
I can give you an example of something that we've done with some of our customers. It is plant simulation. So plant simulation you can use to identify bottlenecks in processes and things like that. But we've also used it as a like a virtual fly through to look at what a factory could look like. Or so yeah, that's something that we've done previously because when you're talking about how your product's going to be manufactured, it can be difficult for investors to see what that's going to look like and where their money's going to go. But it can be done fairly cost effectively with the technology that's out at the moment.
Great. I hope that answers your question, Alex. If you'd like to follow on, please feel free to send us an email. Otherwise, Louisa, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for the supporting team behind you and the efforts that you've put in so far. And for anybody that's joined us, thank you for taking the time out of your day. And we look forward to hearing from you at another webinar or having you join us in an event very soon. Appreciate it all, and thank you.